All right, so I think we can start with the session. Hello, everybody. I am Shubhi Sinha from the youth wing of Rationalist International. Welcome, sir, and welcome to all of you who are attending this Sunday's meeting and watching the live streaming of this Zoom meeting on three different websites. So, the two English websites are sanalidmaruku.com, rationalists.net, and one of the Malayali website is tirali.org. Uh, so we have today three questions related to the controversial Canadian marijuana policy and the famous Dutch experiment of decriminalizing cannabis. When we have been organizing the various questions that we received recently and earlier about this controversial topic, we had the guidelines from Sanal sir that we need not be afraid to discuss any topic as they are all real issues. Most problems in our society can be understood properly only if we discuss them with a rational mind. So, moving on to the first question, however, is on a different but a very interesting topic. So, Aswati CK from Delhi University has asked about the issues of nationalism. Do you consider nationalism dangerous? What are the different variants of the ideas of nationalism in the global north and global south?
Well, beginning with what we understand, the word meaning of nationalism is very simple: feeling belonging to a nation. But in the contemporary context, the moment we say nationalism, it immediately is identified, at least in the northern part of the globe, it's identified as narrow populism, a kind of a closed mindset belonging to one nation and one nation's interests, and without having an international outlook. That's what generally is understood. And it is also considered very dangerous because it's very clear that, especially the First World War and the Second World War, have been influenced by the ideas of nationalism. But on the other side, as Ashwati has rightly put it, there are two variants of nationalism. For example, in the southern part of the globe or in the erstwhile colonies, nationalism has a totally different meaning. For example, in Sri Lanka or India or in Burma, if one speaks about a national spirit, that comes very closely from the independent struggle these countries had against the colonial authorities. For example, the Indian independence movement is known as the Indian nationalist movement, and there is nothing negative in that context. Also in a different pattern, for example, what are the basis of a nation normally? Traditionally, a nation should have a common territory. In the conventional form, it should have a common language, a common history, common ethnic origin. These are the general what you call the parameters to identify the nationhood fundamentally. But India or many other countries like United States have different ethnic communities there. And take the example of India, for example. India is a good example of the southern nationalism, the southern variant of nationalism, because a nationalism, India did not have a common history all throughout. During the Mughal time, India was one empire. During Ashoka's empire, during Harsha's empire, some big empires have been ruling generally India, but it was not controlling the whole India as one nation. It was a loose empire with different kings and different kingdoms having its own say and its own way of ruling. And every single nation had a kind of national identity. Bundelkhand has its own identity, and it was considered to be a sub-nationalistic tendency. The Bengalis had a kind of nationality spirit. The whole Bengal, which includes the present-day Bengal, collectively they speak one language. And earlier it was one state. So India is a different example because it's not a divisive force, But the moment you say nationalism in India, it's a unifying factor of different subnationalities. So one term which has a negative connotation in a different context is understood differently in a different context. So that's why, I mean, the idea of the southern variant, the global south, I mean, what I mean by south is the global south, um, is very clearly understood differently. Whereas in Europe, if you speak about nationalism, it's purely right-wing populism. That's what it is understood. And if one is a nationalist, he does not have a spirit of internationalism. He does not see beyond his nation. He does not see beyond the limitations of a certain identity, a close mindset. And if that is connected with the populist kind of slogans and populist kind of campaigns, which reminds people of the German uprising before the Second World War, and that is what is nationalism or right-wing nationalism that is understood in northern part of the world. But on the other side, nationalism can be a unifying factor when different nationalities join together to make a big nation like India. For example, India is a very good example of the necessity of national spirit to keep a nation together, because India has no common language. Half of the people speak different languages than the official language. And the second official language is English, which is understood by a lot of people, and which was a language of ruling for a long time. Still, it's part of the ruling language. But if you go to Tamil Nadu, the people do not know the official languages from their childhood. English is an alien language, and naturally they speak Tamil. In Kerala, people speak Malayalam, and in Karnataka they speak Kannadiga, and Andhra Pradesh they speak Telugu. In Maharashtra they speak Marathi. Punjab they speak Punjabi. Now, for example, one unifying factor in India probably could be the Bollywood movies, because that becomes very popular and Hindi is comparatively open to people, and people get into these movies and they understand more. But all the same, language is not the key of Indian nationhood. Is it a common history? Yes, all throughout India was not a common nation. It was not, in the present India was not part of one nation any time in history. In earlier, sometimes India had bigger boundaries which expanded to present day Afghanistan. Sometimes it was shrink to small area. But almost from the British time, we have the present national boundaries, but which excludes many other parts of India has lost later. But nationalism then becomes a point of integration of these different subnationalities and a unifying factor, whereas the subnationality becomes a divisive factor. So it's understood differently in very different context, or can one use some other words like patriotism? Patriotism connotes something more than what one understands by nationalism. It's a feeling, my country, my fatherland, or my motherland is I love my motherland kind of a feeling is what is known as patriotism. But in a growing world, in a developing world, the boundaries are slowly getting vanished everywhere. In Europe, the boundaries have really gone. In the European Union, you can travel across without any complication, without passports. And such ideas are developing in different parts of the world. The Baltic, the Benelux, the SAARC in South Asia, all these regional units are emerging as common units and breaking not only the boundaries but the trade barriers. Also, the moment you are closed as a nation, absolutely closed as a nation, where you do not want to look beyond the nation for other cultures coming in, you want to remain with your close culture. That's one way of seeing nationalism. The other way is opening up the borders not only of the country but also of the mind. Accepting and seeing and understanding and get the good things from all cultures is what is developing the world. And whenever that is possible, then only there is cooperation in the world. We are no more independent nations. We all are interdependent now. So you produce something in some country, and I mean you use it in some other country, and you uh, produce some material which is not available in other countries, and you market it elsewhere. Somewhere there is production more efficient, and there people are producing. Somewhere there is sugar cane that's good and that's produced, and where there is a wheat uh, and paddy going in some place and which is required in some other place, that is distributed. The old idea of a self-sufficient village or a self-sufficient small nation or a self-sufficient country is no more existing, because we are a global village growing and taking out our boundaries. All these limitations, at the end of the day, the idea of nationalism, if it is making a broader base for example, India or other southern countries, well, I mean, we should still go further to understand the horizons and to expand further and think of a universal mindset, think of understanding the world as one. And I would eventually imagine a new world where boundaries go and people can move easily, and people can go and live anywhere they want, and all cultures are blending together and trying to identify or maintaining their own cultural traditions whenever it's required. But all the same, it's open to other people, not close to other people. That's the spirit of a new global nationalism that we have to develop. That's what I would say, that any closed nationalism of any sort or unifying nationalism of any sort, what we require is a planetary nationalism where we all belong to, where we all are equal, where nobody is discriminated, where everybody has a common spirit of brotherhood and sisterhood. That's what I would consider which is more important to achieve than narrow nationalism of any sort. The northern variety of understanding about nationalism as a closed worldview, or the southern perspective that it is unifying the different cultures together or different subnationalities together. In both cases, we have to still grow to become uh, universal citizens, global citizens. And that's where we are growing. Internet has been one major step that united people, or we have seen beyond the boundaries. That there should be further development. There will be great developments coming in the coming decades. And before centuries pass, we are going to be a global nation, and a global nationalism should develop. And then only we can think about, I mean, a planetary, I mean, humankind. Thank you, Shubi. And let's go to the next
Yeah.
topic.
So, well, in the last week, we had many questions about narcotic drugs, bhang, that widely consumed in India during the Holi festival, marijuana, cannabis, etc. So, one question is about recent legalization of the recreational use of marijuana in Canada. You may have many times spoken in appreciation of the policies of Canadian President Justin Trudeau. What's your take on the new policy of Canada?
Well, the Canadian experiment, the whole world is looking um, very curious and serious what is happening in Canada now. Because Canada has made a very big leap in a policy making. They have, for now, decided to uh, allow people to use, for recreational purposes, marijuana. What is marijuana? Marijuana is a very comparatively lighter drug as compared to the very dangerous other narcotic drugs that is in existence. It's known as ganja in India, or kanjav in southern India. They speak like that, and cannabis. I mean, there are many words. Or this is what is now legalized for recreational purposes. One can buy anywhere, and one can consume it without any legal obstruction. What would be the result of it? The idea of legalizing marijuana or cannabis, or the lighter uh, I mean, uh, opium. It's a kind of opiate of all different forms, and this idea has been coming up earlier in different countries also, because one of the major positions that the people who speak in favor of uh, marijuana legalization is that there is a big criminal mafia working it to provide to people, because the moment it is banned, the moment it's not available, those people who are dependent on it, those people who are using it, would need it in any way. So then they have to obtain it from illegal sources. The moment something is illegal, there should be a supply source which is protected by a criminal gang. So fundamentally, the moment anything is banned, those who want it, they will still use it. And then there is an underground mafia to protect it and to make the supply line running. It will function like that. The same like prostitution. Organized prostitution, when it is banned, it's still, people would, go for prostitution centers. And then there is a mafia protecting that. And there has been an experiment in Netherlands some years back to legalize prostitution. That's, many people mistake these kind of experiments as promoting it. The Netherlands experience, I would come to that, after this, because, that's also a special question. But coming to the Canadian position, the Canadian position is a little more aggressive, a little more, different than the Netherlands position. What they try is, they would like to differentiate the different drugs. The drug is a common way. That's never used nowadays. The kind of intoxicants, which is going very heavy, very dangerous at one side, and on the other side there are comparatively lesser in danger, like marijuana or cannabis. So if it's banned, there are chances that people are more attracted to the more dangerous things, because it all depends on the secret supply line. And people want to experiment a lot of things. The moment anything is banned, there is a great curiosity to experiment it. I see the danger that including cannabis, including marijuana, if you regularly use, you can become an addict of it. And you can eventually develop schizophrenic tendencies, and you can become very, very, you can have depression developing eventually, and your reaction, the speed of reaction to things can slow down. But not all the people. A high number of people, if they use any kind of marijuana, including marijuana and cannabis, are supposed to be very light than the other severe drugs that's available in the market. There are things like ecstasy, or LSD, and all these kind of things have higher impact and much dangerous impact on people than marijuana and cannabis. So that's the key of the policy of Canada. So if people are allowed to use less dangerous, as an entertainment, they can have it. Like, for example, everyone knows that alcoholism is dangerous. And the moment you are addicted to alcohol, a lot of people have tendency to become addicts. There is no civilized use of alcohol in every situation. There are many people who become addicts of alcohol, and they become very, very dependent on alcohol. They can develop depression in their mindset. They can go completely schizophrenic, or having hallucinations and all these kind of things, and they can damage their health. But still, all kinds of alcohol, different forms of it, are permitted everywhere. The reason is very simple. Well, alcohol is an entertainment food. Lighter alcohol is part of food in many parts of the world. In Britain, for example, a glass of beer is normal, and it's part of normal food. In most of Europe, A glass of wine is part of the food. Nobody considers it even as an alcohol, because for centuries and centuries that has been part of the food culture in Europe. But as compared to the harder alcohol, the lighter alcohols like beer or ciders or wine uh, are less damaging. And also, wine, for example, has a lot of other, food traditions, which is part of the eating habit of people. Well, of course, if one eats red meat, also, one has a lot of health problems, and you can, have cholesterol, and it's not supposed to be a good food if you consume it regularly. But red meat is eaten by people, and that's part of the food culture. So their people are to be told what is good and what is bad, and what is good for their health, and where they have to have restrictions. And the restrictions are not decided by a government. No government can say that you cannot anymore eat red meat, that is not good for you, and you should all eat white meat only. If a government says that, that's not a civilized government, because that's taking away your freedom to decide what you want to do. That's the same thing with alcohol. The ban of alcohol has been tried in many countries. Russia has once tried. The reason was the outcome was very dangerous. People who were dependent on alcohol, they started looking for different sources of alcohol. And for example, if there is spirit in the brake fluid of the car, people started drinking brake fluid, or other dangerous things. And these kind of things were very, very dangerous. And after seeing the outcome, the danger only, that policy has been changed in Russia. India has tried it. In many states, like in Gujarat, this has been tried. And every time we found that illicit liquor immediately takes place of the alcohol. Whereas when alcohol is legalized, there are two advantages. One, there is a monitoring of it. And how it is produced is controlled, and there is absolutely dangerous alcohol cannot be produced or distributed, and if anybody tries, that can be stopped, and those who want can get comparatively controlled in production alcohol. Second thing, what's the percentage of alcohol can be decided and controlled, and tax can be regulated on that basis to discourage heavy alcohol and comparatively encourage the lesser alcohol content drinks. So these are, when you have a monitoring possibility, you can have imposition of things not by banning anything, but by incentives and discouragement. In many countries, in Baltic countries, what I found that alcohol is very, very cheap by the price. International brands, see, for example, expensive whiskies are so cheap in Lithuania, Latvia, and all these countries, because there policies. People should have the choice, and the government should not put too much tax on that. And that's one policy in many of the Eastern European countries also. The alcohol is comparatively cheap there. So because it's part of people's right is what is seen there. And in cold countries, it's generally, many people believe that alcohol may be good for the cold climate, which is not at all proved. That's an idea only. But all the same, the freedom of people to choose what they want cannot be stopped by anybody. And if anybody stops it, any government stops it, those who want to use will use it. For example, in Thailand, you get death penalty if you use even marijuana. But still, there are many people who are caught with marijuana or cannabis and face trial. Why people risk even their life for something which is banned? Because banning is not the way. The only way to address the issue of drug, in my opinion, is education, educating people. And there is a lot of promotion of all these illegal drugs, or especially narcotic drugs or cannabis or all these kind of things. It's promoted by the mafia, encouraged, and a kind of cult image is built around that, and it's part of enjoyment for a lot of people, and a lot of youngsters are drawn into that. And imagine a whole young generation falling for uh, lighter drugs first, and if there is a mafia, and if the supply line is very lucrative, they would encourage people to go into harder uh, narcotics, where they are more and more dependent, and they are crazily dependent on that, and which would be very, very expensive, and the money minting machine working behind the whole structure would be simply benefiting out of that. But the moment it is legalized, especially lighter ones legalized, people can have a choice to try it, because it's less addictive, for example, than alcohol. And uh, if one is alcohol, if one uses very heavily and regularly, I mean, you are damaging your brain, and you are damaging your the chemical structure of your brain is seriously affected. And similarly, I mean, any kind of marijuana, if you use regularly, I mean, that will affect your brain, and I mean that can make you. There are tendencies of schizophrenia, which is proven very clearly that, I mean, you can go into dangerous situation in the long run, not in one or two uses. But instead of having uncontrolled, uncivilized, produced in an uncivilized way and controlled by mafia, the structure, if it's at a basic level, if people want it, give it in a lighter way, and uh, which is legalized, which is protected by the system. And when it is, when it is legalized, there is no scope for a mafia. That's the primary thing. And the crime connected with this mafia can immediately be stopped. And secondly, the moment anything is a criminalization, it makes more addicts simply. You're afraid, you want to depend on that. And everywhere where any kind of narcotic drugs, or any kind of any kind of substance, that's the correct word that is used everywhere now, because whether it's a drug means some other things also. Any kind of substance that intoxicates you, that includes alcohol, that includes the cannabis, that includes marijuana, that includes heroin, everything is generally said as substance, and the misuse of it is known as a substance abuse. That's one word that is coming up everywhere. But the moment it is decriminalized, you reduce the number of addicts, because it's controlled. The moment it is decriminalized, you know where it is going, and who is buying it, and how it is used. So it's an experiment. It can be regulated is one interest, and the other argument is, if the whole money connection with the sale of the cannabis or marijuana were all going to the mafia, and police and the anti-crime wing has to spend a lot of money to control that. There is a lot of criminal activities, protection of this underground, carrying of all these kind of things. This is a big criminal empire. The moment you legalize it, you stop that criminal activity, you stop the existence of this mafia, because there is no protection needed anymore. And number two, whereas the government can put a tax on that, it will add up to the revenue, and which will be, for example, anyway, like alcohol, when people consume, some people will get ill out of that. Like tobacco, some people will get ill out of that. You have to put more and more taxes for that, because the people who get, at the end of the day, ill out of it has to be taken care of. So that's a responsibility of the governments also. So one can discourage it also. One can educate people. That's one way of handling it. It's not the job of government to stop things and control things on the other side. And on the second side, it's going to stop a lot of criminal activities and working of mafia. The third, people can have their way of happiness in a lesser dangerous way than when they use harder stuff like heroin or LSD or ecstasy or other very dangerous things. So this is the argument for that, and for and against there are different arguments, but cross fingers, everyone watches what will be the result. That we will know in a couple of years. And till then, one should not I mean, I would say that one should watch and wait. What would be the end result? There is only one more country which has officially legalized marijuana. That is Uruguay. It's a large, big country in Africa. I mean, uh, in the southern part of the world. And now this, I mean, Canada is a G20 country. I mean, it's a developed country, and I mean, it's a very major development. It's a big policy change, and the Canadian people have celebrated it. They've been very happy about it. There's a pro uh, marijuana campaign which was going on in the country, and the pro marijuana campaigners have been extremely happy. And I mean, apparently that has a big support in Canada. But let's see what will be the impact at the end of the day. Whether it was a negative decision or a positive decision, we will know in the coming months and years, and other countries can take clue from that. And we should not go into this model very fast, because we need close watching and monitoring and understanding the phenomenon when it is, I mean, legalized.
Well, we have a similar question from Mark Alexander from London. He asks, I have heard you speaking about the experiment of the Dutch government in the 1990s by decriminalizing cannabis. What was the outcome of that experiment? And are these more narcotic addicts in the Netherlands? Was this policy success?
Yeah, I remember. I mean, that was in 1994 when I've been visiting Netherlands. I mean, this campaign, there were 2, 3 major campaigns going on. One was campaign for euthanasia, the right to, I mean, terminate one's own life when one is ill, or I mean, one at an age one can decide for oneself. This other campaign was legalizing prostitution. The third campaign was legalizing or decriminalizing, uh, I mean, cannabis. Again, the Dutch experiment, I mean, that's a very, very interesting experiment. I've been watching it very closely. I've written about that even at that time, because I was very curious, because I know some of the humanist leaders who very strongly stood for this campaign, like Rob Tailman and all. I mean, were very active. He was a professor in the Utrecht University on sociology, and he was one of the campaigners for decriminalizing all this stuff, and the impact of it stopping the mafia and the criminal activities was one of the major things that he has been focusing at that time. Uh, to defend a position, you need not be part of that. That's an important thing one has to understand. For example, to defend gay rights, you need not be a gay. You can be a gay also. You need to be apologetic also. But to defend the right of people to use cannabis or marijuana, one need not be using it. If you ask me if I have ever used marijuana, no. Maybe perhaps when I was a student, one of my co-students once tried to offer me a locally made one cigarette. Out of curiosity, I took 2 puffs. I still remember. I was 17 or 18 years old, but I was told already by my family and my colleagues, and I've seen my own 2 uncles. One brilliant person who got very high marks, completely getting damaged in his life because he has gone into, I mean, the Indian version of marijuana. I've seen that, and I've seen that, also. So therefore, I was warned myself, and I was not interested in that. But I have, uh, I mean, as a student, I've been smoking. I mean, knowing very well that it was dangerous. I mean, out of a lot of other things, I mean, people smoke because of different reasons. But I was clear enough to understand at the right age to stop it. Decades back, I could stop it, and I'm very clearly uh, about my what I should consume. I have a very clear understanding. So these all are part of life, and many youngsters still. I mean, though there is an international big campaign about tobacco, I mean, a lot of young persons are attracted to that, but it's their freedom. While it is bad, while it should be discouraged, I would not say that these are to be banned. Similarly, the Dutch experiment, coming straightly to the Dutch experiment, what I found at that time were 2 different things. Number one, there were a lot of addicts in Netherlands, and these addicts wanted their supply, and they would be getting it through the underground supply through the mafia, which is protected by the mafia, and keep this underground channel working. There was a huge mafia working, and there's a lot of criminal activities in connection with that, because it's secretive, it gives big punishment, therefore you have to protect it, and there is loyalty questions involved. There is any kind of leakage is stopped, and that was the key of the whole criminal activities around that. But the moment it was decriminalized, the Dutch government has done two important things. One was, those who are addicted, are dependent on for example, marijuana or heroin or anything, if one is identified as a person who is dependent, when a person who is terribly addicted to any kind of substance, and if he doesn't get it, he can get very wild. He can be doing any kind of crime to obtain a dose of it, because his body requires it. It's not his mind that's working. It's a mechanism that's developed in your body that you are demanding it. That's the danger of many of these dangerous drugs. And then the government decided to identify these people and told them that, well, this is no more a crime. We understand your problem, but we are not going to, make big preaching to you. Nobody wants preaching. No children, especially when even parents say something to them, most children would say that, Papa, don't preach. I've heard it also. So that's the mindset of most of the people. Nobody wants the preaching. They want opinions. They want to be taken as serious people, and they want to be considered with their own opinion. So they were told that if you want to have your drug, well, you can have it, but you have to register. Then you get a free dose at kiosks made, because they have an identity card, the addicted people. So then you don't have to go publicly there. The kiosks are made in many parts of the streets, and if you have an identity, and if you want to, your dose is decided, identified by doctors, and you could go and get your shot or get your whatever pill or whatever it is, and you get relieved. Otherwise, you are in a great criminal mindset, and you can do anything. If you are a drug addict, you can do anything to get your dose of it at the right time. So that was stopped by providing them the right dose free of cost. Free of cost. So there was a lot of criticism. What kind of morality this government is speaking about? You are giving free narcotic drugs to people. But that was more a concerned approach, which made a dramatic change in the whole system in Netherlands. Then they have those who want it can have it. But what is available in the market was decided and controlled with its quality, and that's you can go and buy it in a medical shop, or in coffee shops you can buy, but it's controlled. The supply is controlled, and there is a government monitoring, like alcohol is now done in every country. It's monitored, controlled, and what's the level of addiction, or not addiction, the level of intoxication, if that could be the right word for the getting influenced by this drug, is that is controlled, decided, and there is a monitoring about it. So by providing these lighter versions, they kept off the dangerous drugs. They were controlled, they were stopped, but those who want, they got it, the lighter version. So the curiosity, the moment it's not a banned thing, half of the curiosity is gone, half of the thrill is gone. Those who really want to try it, they can try it. If one wants to feel a little high, they can have it. But the harder drugs were only supplied to those people who are at that moment dependent on that. Means no new addicts of harder drugs would be encouraged. That was a very important step. At the end of the day, so what one finds is that in as compared to other countries, in Sweden, for example, the number of people who are dependent on the marijuana or cannabis or any kind of drugs of that pattern, that has gone down dramatically. Except there was one small jump one can see at one time, but otherwise systematically the consumption of marijuana and cannabis has gone down in Netherlands, and the number of addicts dramatically came down. That's a success. That was a success of the Netherlands experiment. So uh, the Netherlands has a lot of experiments. For example, the legalization of prostitution, for example, was seen the same way. There's a lot of arguments about against prostitution. But if they are not part of a mafia, if there is no abduction of young people and have been put on the see why all these things happen, because it's an illegal act, it's a crime, so you have to protect it, and you have to do it all secretly, and that's to be protected with a lot of criminals, and mafia is the key of the whole thing that makes it all criminal. In Netherlands, if somebody wants to be in the profession of prostitution, especially those people who were there in that, they could register themselves. They could have their little, places for their services, but that's monitored. Why? Because there's a health control on these people. All these people will have to go through health control. At that time, for example, HIV, when this was legalized, HIV was already on the air, and so they were all asked to uh, practice safe sex at one side, and then secondly, they were all monitored for their health. They were checked every month, and they were given health care. And the name Red Street has changed because there was no red light or anything. It was full light street, and anybody can go there. And there is no criminal. Police was protecting the street, and there is no criminal activity. This was first tried in Utrecht, one city. After the experiment was successful, they found that prostitution has actually gone down there. One of the reasons that many people go to prostitution is not for the solicitation of sexuality from some other people, but doing something secret, doing a hidden thing. They want a little dark street, a narrow street if possible, and if there is a lot of darkness in the house, all these kind of things give a kind of some hidden happiness than the actual pleasure that they want to get from sexuality. So this all where experts were studying all these fine things, and floodlit roads, and police protection, anybody could go, and there'll be free condoms available, and at the end of the day, the number of people who were on prostitution have gone down. If it was banned, it would still happen secretly, and there will be mafia around that. So the mafia has vanished, the crimes have vanished, and the number of people who go to prostitutes also dramatically came down. And that's why that has been implemented in the whole country. And at the end of the day, so far, it's a successful policy, and that has encouraged the mental health of people because of the whole social structure. Because criminalization of anything that you want to do, and you do when you do it, if it's a crime, then you are a part of a kind of fear complex, and you are suppressed, and you are more and more into that. That's what was taken in Netherlands. I would say the Netherlands experiment was a big success. There are a lot of studies still going on. There are a lot of articles and a lot of serious studies going on this and that side. And there's a lot of people in Netherlands who don't want this policy to continue, because they think that there is a bad name for Netherlands for that. But Netherlands, on the other side, is one of the most civilized parts of Europe. By consideration of human rights, the way they have to, they are considering their immigrants. There are a lot of things. Netherlands is considered one of the most civilized, where free press is respected. Like Scandinavian countries, Netherlands has a big reputation of good governance and respect for people. So I would say that the Dutch experiment, the Netherlands is called the Dutch people. Dutch experiment was a success. But there is nothing to be too worried about these kind of things. This experiment so far has shown that it's a success, but one can still watch. And if one should have, very courageous experiments to change the society or move things forward. Thank you.
Well, another fundamental question comes from Akhila Suryamurthy from Chennai. The question is, when you advocate freedom of thinking and individual freedom, will it also include freedom to be an alcoholic? freedom to use narcotics or other dangerous drugs, tobacco use, etc. Won't it be better to ban all these dangerous things to keep a society healthy?
Well, I mean, I've seen rationalists. I mean, that's an easy example, telling that religions are bad, superstitions are bad. Well, dangerous superstitions, some anti-superstition law is uh, using direct exploitative methods to, use the superstition of people. But should religions be banned? I mean, so we have, officially the caste is not respected in India. Asking a caste is a wrong thing. I mean, if somebody who's supposed to be from the supposed lower caste, and if even one addresses a person with their caste name, it's a crime in India. But still, caste system prevails. And tobacco, the dangers we all know. Everywhere in the world, people know the dangers of tobacco, and every packet of cigarette is written. But should we ban it? The moment it is banned, those who want to smoke, they will still smoke. They will secretly grow their tobacco. They will try to do that, use tobacco. And tobacco supply will be secretly, somewhere will be, there are big places in the world where tobacco is still produced. And that will be smuggled to countries and it will be secretly sold. And it can have 10 times or 20 times more price, but those who want still go for it. The best way is advocacy. I would say that tobacco has to be discouraged all around the world. If you think of the public health of people, also national policies towards health also. It's a very dangerous thing to encourage people to use tobacco. So therefore, all governments all around the world are trying to discourage people to use tobacco, because when it was considered a status symbol at one time and nobody earlier understood how dangerous tobacco was. And those times, you could see, but now it's discouraged everywhere. You cannot officially advertise tobacco. For example, in Finland, you cannot display a packet of cigarette in a shop. And how it is done is it's kept in a closed place and it has all numbers. And those who use it have to tell this number and they get it at the counter. Because if it cannot be displayed, so that youngsters or other people who are not using tobacco are not encouraged to see it and buy it, seeing the beautiful packets. So that's a good idea, I think. But all the same, banning is not the way. Banning is not the way for anything. I would say that, nothing. We should not try to ban anything, to the extent if it's not against the whole society or dangerous to the society. People should be taught, there should be education about the dangers of it, and still there should be other ways of discouraging tobacco by making the which is done also now, the pictures of ailments that you are getting, how your lungs are going to be affected, how it can be promoting you to get cancer. Everything is displayed on the packets, and that's to be told. There should be more and more public education to discourage tobacco. But banning is not the way. That will encourage immediately. Suddenly there will be more interest on tobacco, and then tobacco consumption may go up. Now worldwide tobacco consumption is going down. That's a good achievement we are having. Last 25 years, tobacco achievement. And all other dangerous, addictive things like alcohol, which I've mentioned earlier also. I would say that the best thing is tobacco also. One another possibility is those who want tobacco, one can give, lesser, if tobacco content is less in the cigarettes that is available. That's one way of, those who want to try, they get lesser tobacco and more taxes, and these are the ways to handle it. And also, it is a burden, not only the person who is smoking, who gets ill, big chances to get ill, but also to the state. Because when you get ill, your productivity is affected. It's affecting your people around you. Your children, your family, if you have one, or your colleagues, and your capacity to support yourself. Everything goes down, and the state has a burden to look after you. So therefore, it's in the interest of the nation, it's the interest of the family, it's the interest of the society that people reduce, and your own interest for your own health reasons, that people should reduce the consumption of tobacco and stop it. I mean, whenever it's possible, I would advocate all people whom I know who are still using tobacco. I don't like preaching people, but whenever it is allowed in the limitations of a friendship circle, I would advocate. I would tell them. I would encourage them to stop it. That's the same thing because about alcohol also. There are some people who have a tendency to be alcoholic. Not everybody has that tendency, or more and more alcohol dependent. And those people should be told they should realize themselves and they should abstain from alcohol. But otherwise, stopping alcohol altogether is not wise, because that's, also that's part of a food tradition, especially wines and all are part of food tradition. We should not leave away all these kind of things. On the other side, encourage to go for consumption at a healthy level and discourage addiction, discourage overuse, and discourage alcoholism, discourage dependence on these structures. And let us discuss all these things. And I always say that, as rightly said in the beginning, we should not shy away from any of these subjects, because the moment you shy away from these subjects, actually we are encouraging a situation that the right conversation is not done on things. Any topic on the world, or beyond this world, anything that we want to discuss, we should be able to freely discuss in a civilized way, without passion, without any kind of anger or any hatred. All subjects, from religion to private use of tobacco, anything we should discuss, or sexuality or anything, should be on in an open discussion in a civilized way. It should be possible in between, children and parents also. There should be healthy education, healthy conversations possible about all subjects. Don't scold people when they are young, and don't impose bans on people, because that's all going on the negative way. Let's allow things and educate people and control it, that it's not finally leading to abuse of it. That's the best policy in my view. I would say, for the freedom of the people cannot be stopped. See, I don't believe in religion. Religion is bad, I know. But all the same, I stand for the freedom of religion, because that's the right of people to believe what they want. It's a question of their conscience. So a rationalist would stand, certainly, the right of people to have their own conscience. Similarly, right of people to have their tobacco if they want, while tobacco is bad, should be allowed. Banning is not the way to address a social issue.
I already see two people raising their hand. I would really request you, this is the last question, and then you can go ahead and ask your questions or doubts, whatever you have. So the last question that we have is from Martin from Stockholm, and he's asking about our policy on tobacco, alcohol, narcotic drugs. Though it is well known that these are all bad, many people are dependent on them. What is the rationalist policy on substance use?
I think that's what I was trying to explain because we have been clubbing all these questions that came on this subject, because it was on the backdrop of Canadian new law that was a big discussion all around the world. So that was why these questions were clubbed together, because these questions were not coming in one time, it was coming at different times, and that were all clubbed. The policy that we would like to pursue is very simple. No ban for any substance, but clear discouraging of all abuse possible. Any substance that's possibly can be abused, and educate people about the dangers. And you ask people to, when they consume, tobacco, they should know. See, they should know what are the dangers. And if they consume alcohol, they should know what are the dangers. And if they consume wherever it is legal, cannabis or marijuana, they should understand its danger also, because people should not be ignorant about its dangers. That's the most important thing. I would say that informed adults can decide for themselves. It may be wrong, but they have the right to do that. So long as it's not an infringement of the rights of other people, or a crime on other people, the informed adult has a right to do good and bad for himself or herself. That's a universal policy that we have accepted long back, and that is what I think should be, when we think about individuals' right and right to decide for oneself, that should be the key policy that we have. Thank you.
100% agree to the fact that an informed adult has the right to make their own decision and face the consequences. Uh, well, so this is the end of our questions, and now I see Saji raising their hand. I would request you to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, madam. Sanal sir, good evening. And all other participants, good evening. Sir, in my opinion, any psychotropic substances would not be legalized because the person who will prescribe you a medicine should be a qualified psychiatrist. Otherwise, what happens is the consumer don't know about the dependency of the drug and how that drug will alter your thoughts and behavior. So we know some accidents, road accidents, and some crimes also happening under the influence of drug. Recently, in Kerala, our department, police department, banned the free usage of the anxiolytic drug called alprazolam, because they found that most of the crimes are happening, most cruel crimes are happening under the influence of this specific drug. So some medical shops were giving this drug illegally. So these drugs, whether any psychotropic drug, will alter our mood and how we behave in our society and in family, and we can't predict that, and some will produce dependency also. So any psychotropic drugs should not be legalized. So I also remember one incident. A psychiatrist wrote in his diary, like about 15 years ago, one boy who was appearing for his 10th standard examination, and he got exam fear and severe anxiety. That psychiatrist prescribed him a anxiolytic drug. But what happened is he lost all his anxiety of his exam, and he did not studied, and actually he failed in that exam.
Okay, I understand your position. Yeah. Um, the point here is, this is the general, if you take the pros and cons of any kind of substance which has addictive tendency. The number of accidents that happen because of people drink and drive, that's much higher than people using cannabis or marijuana. People are drinking and driving, that's it's criminalized. You cannot drive in any country in the world. If your alcohol level is above a certain level, you cannot drive. It's banned to drive a car or any vehicle. But still, people drink and drive, and that's the largest reason of road accidents. The single largest, reason for road accidents in the whole world. So should we stop all wines or alcohol? Will it work? That's the second question. Will it stop the road accidents? No, because that's why I said that we should have a pragmatic policy on this kind of things. Why pragmatic? Because we all know that, if you have heavy consumption of alcohol or psychotropic medicine or cannabis or anything that is narcotic or addictive, or opium-based things are generally called narcotic, and any of these things are addictive. It reduces your, the time that you need to react to situations. It reduces it dramatically. Also, alcohol reduces. In splinter seconds, when you are driving, you have to take a decision in splinter seconds sometimes. And the response time is much lesser when you are consuming alcohol. That is why it is said, it's not for moral reasons, but for pure pragmatic reason, that it is clearly said that you cannot drive when you are drunk. Because the number of accidents because of alcohol is very heavy everywhere in the world. And that's discouraged in different ways. For example, in some countries, if you have identified having alcohol in your body beyond a certain limit, you are not allowed to drive for next 3 years in some countries. very strictly. That's one way of stopping it. But still, people drink and drive because the human nature cannot be controlled by strict laws only. And if you ban anything, alcohol or a psychotropic substance or a narcotic substance or any substance that is going to be addictive or in the longer run can be uh, I mean you can have a lot of problems like schizophrenia is one possibility that people can fall into. I mean, at least 4% of the people who regularly use any kind of I mean uh, uh, addictive thing like alcohol or any kind of narcotic drugs have a tendency to be depressive. Suicide tendencies go up. Alcoholics also. But still, alcohol is not banned. Everywhere where it is tried, it failed. Because when we stop alcohol by law, it does not work. That's the whole thing. And the more stringent laws we apply on that, the more dramatic ways people find to get it. So you cannot stop it. Human nature is that in a way that we want to do things that we want, and people take any kind of adventurous risk to obtain it. So then who would supply it? Illegal channels would supply it, and then who would protect it? The mafia would protect it. So everywhere the crime level goes up and accidents go up because the kind of alcohol that they obtain from secret sources would be dangerous. And when it is legalized, even for cannabis or marijuana, if it is legalized, those who use it, we know also who are using it. And if it is controllable, that it will be less dangerous than people going into hard substance. That is I'm not pro or against these policies, but the argument in favor of allowing and decriminalizing is coming from the idea that you cannot stop anything by law. Only by making people understand for themselves, we can change it. Of course, administering a medicine on children, that's a different thing because children cannot decide for themselves. There we can have laws. But as I earlier said, people should not be ignorant of its dangers. They should be repeatedly told about the dangers. But knowing the dangers, if one person wants to drink alcohol or drink anything that he wants, nobody can stop it. And secondly, even if we stop it, it doesn't get stopped. If there is alcohol ban, there will be illicit liquor available in the market. And if you ban cigarettes, secretly tobacco would be reaching everywhere. Because those people who want it, they try to get it. That's human nature. People are in search of what they want. You cannot, for example, the Dutch example when they spoke about prostitution, the dangers were not connected with the HIV only, but also the criminal activities connected with the protection of these secret centers. So if you stop it, immediately there is a secret group emerging to protect it. The mafia emerges. The underworld emerges, and they would protect it. And then it becomes a center of criminal activities. Decriminalizing the maximum things and not making people criminals, but allowing people to understand things, to correct themselves and to modify themselves and to take their own decisions consciously. Informed adults taking their decisions would be the best in my view. And of course, if something is, there are certain, chemical drugs, which is synthetic chemical drugs. When you consume once, you are hooked to it. Such things have to be very strictly stopped but because many people are not hooked to such things. Majority of the people who use any kind of narcotic drugs are generally going for lighter ones, and that is what the policy should be liberal to, is what the Canadian model or the Netherlands model is telling. Once again, I would say that I am a curious watcher of this scene because social policy is something that fascinates me, because that is interesting, because how the society is transform itself to be a better society is something all of us should be fascinated with. Therefore, I am very curiously watching. I've been watching the Netherlands experiment, and I'm watching curiously the Canadian experiment also. But I would say, deeper somewhere, I feel that informed adults having the freedom, and educating people to stop the dangerous stuff is the better policy in if you go to the ground reality of understanding things.
Next, we have Ranjan Parali. Sir, I would ask you to unmute yourself.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening.
I am Ranjan.
Hello,
I
Ranjan.
like to show a Somalada plant.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand what you're trying to say. I mean, that is something I have mentioned in my book on Vedas. I mean, there are.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you meaning?
Sir?
This is the plant you're showing. Okay.
This
What is that exactly?
Somalada plant.
Is that cannabis or what?
No, sir. Somalada plant.
Okay. I don't know what is Somalata, but Somalata
Somarasam.
in the Veda.
Somarasam.
Somarasam. That's a different thing altogether, Ranjan. I mean, in the Vedas, especially in the early Vedas, Rig Veda and all. I mean, there are two kind of intoxicating stuff were mentioned so heavily. One is Sura, and the other is Somarasa.
Sir, Somarasa is made by this plant.
I doubt, because the Somarasa, what is mentioned in Rigveda, is explained how it looks like. It looks exactly like the present, cannabis. That's how it is. I mean, what we generally say in India as ganja or ganja is exactly what. So it's squeezed and the liquid is taken out. That is what was Somarasa was, and the plant is explained, and what they experience after consuming Somarasa also is explained there. Indra, for example, once he consumes Somarasa, he gets enormous energy and he's laughing all the time, and he can destroy all his enemies. And they make special havens and yagyas to get enough Somarasa, so that the fighting against the Dasyus can be very, very energetic. So major, what are the major yagyas that were prescribed in the our Vedas? One for rain, one for good climate, one for good children, and to get better Sura and better Somarasa. Because people identified all these things much earlier in all cultures. And also you can see that post-Vedic period, the Purana period or the Greek mythological period, there's a lot of fantastic ideas people are presenting with the fine imagination of flying people and all dramatic ideas. And the parallel of the Greek mythology and the Indian mythology. I mean, in Vedas you cannot see much mythology, but later part of the mythology building. One finds a lot of stories. There are interpretations. I've read articles telling that this could be the influence of apparently Somarasa or the Cannabis is one explanation that people have. These fantastic ideas. The Indian mythology is so rich with so great ideas and funny stories, which humans normally cannot imagine with common sense. And how did they get these ideas? This is one of the explanations that was given by some authors. And also, similarly, in Semitic area, there is a kind of mushroom. It's a kind of holy mushroom that they eat. That grows in the deserts, and it is hallucinogenic. People get a lot of hallucination. You can see Jehovah in the bushes and all these kind of things very easily after that. So this holy mushroom and early Christianity is one major book, which is also interesting if anybody wants to read, because these hallucinations that people have about their gods, perhaps a lot was influenced by the kind of things that they found fascinating. So Somarasa is, and Sura is certainly earlier forms of alcohol, and Somarasa is clearly, the liquid that is fused coming out from the present cannabis.
Well, we also have AB Abraham. I think he wants to add something. Sir, if you can unmute yourself.
Bhave, idondu unmute ചെയ്യടാ. Bhave.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Am I audible? Am I audible? With regard to the first topic with global nationalism,
Yep.
my question is, the present rulers of India, BJP government, they are propagating Hindu nationalism. So whether that type of nationalism will be a factor for the disintegration of India, that is Hindu nationalism. The second question is with regard to the Catholic Church. They in India, I think they hold 50 or 60 licenses for brewery and winery. Altogether, in the with regard to, we can say distilleries, but they are opposing your idea of open-minded use getting the alcohol or other substance, other alcohol or wine. So in medical field, pethidine, morphine, and fentanyl, it is not available to the common man. So my question with regard to the Catholic Church is that they are holding 50 or 60 licenses in Kerala and as well as in other parts of India. The first question is about the nationalism, and I request.
Yeah, good questions. Regarding the Indian government, so if you officially speak, it's not BJP that's ruling the central government, it's the NDA that's ruling the central government. Technically, I mean, I do not know. See, we know that, I mean, there is a tendency towards Hindu nationalism, I mean, amongst a major section of the people who belong to BJP. Officially, they did not say, I mean, let's take things on the fact sheet. Did BJP say that they want a Hindu nation? Did they ever, anywhere, officially say that they want a Hindu nation? Can you show one document? It's one sees tendencies of Hindu nationalism especially amongst fringe groups. That's the major thing. For example, the wild mobs against, cow slaughtering. There are laws, that's a different thing. The mobs taking laws in their hand, attacking people. And the mobs who are, homophobic. The mobs who are attacking, people on a young couple on a Valentine's Day. This all happened earlier also. Even killing in the name of cows also happened earlier. Cow slaughter ban was there earlier also. These are tendencies of Hindu nationalism, one can say. But as I once earlier said, that Hindu nationalism was part of India's nationalism. Indian independence movement was also linked with the Hindu nationalism and Islamic nationalism, along with the secular nationalism which prevailed. So this was part of the Indian national movement. So always there was a tendency towards Hindu nationalism and towards Islamic nationalism. And people like Dadabhai Navroji, I mean, a lot of people, Bala Gangadhar Tilak, a lot of people were closely associated with Hindu nationalism in India. They were all Congress leaders at one time. Jinnah was a Congress leader who was very closely associated with Islamic nationalism later. But what prevailed was a secular nationalism. See, still we have a constitution in India, which is not a theocratic constitution. It can change anytime. I mean, anything can change. But will I have always, there is that tendency, I've written articles that India might one day become a Hindu Iran. I've written articles that's published all around the world. But all the same, I would always say that the tricky situation that India could go theocratic at one side and the power of secularism holding it back on the other side. This permanent conflict is there on the Indian scene. So, for example, the moment we see that when people are articulate that, well, could India go as a Hindu nation? So there is an immediate alert amongst the whole people. So that also is a vigilance against that. And also, amongst the Hindus in India, the majority of the Hindus are not fanatic. The political Hindu, which is emerging very powerfully and slowly getting if it goes in that direction, can it be dangerous? Is one question many people are asking. Well, there is a possibility. We cannot deny that possibility. But also, there is a possibility that more and more, you can see tendencies, for example, from the BJP leadership to be accommodative to, for example, a comparatively plural society in Goa, in the eastern India, where Hindus are not in majority, they are coming to power, which also shows that they are trying to be more accommodative. Though I didn't like a prime minister coming and speaking about Saint Alphonsa, because Saint Alphonsa is a scam. That's another story we can tell. But Narendra Modi going to Kerala and speaking about the land of Saint Alphonsa is something trying to be accommodative to the skeptical Christians. Skeptical in the sense, not the rationally skeptical about the Hindu nationalism. There was an effort to win these people. These tendencies show that BJP, though there are elements in BJP or in the big camp of the present ruling circle, there are many people who may want to take it to the right-wing Hindu nationhood. The larger section of the party that is in power may pull it back to more accommodative, because otherwise no country, when there is a plural society is existing, if it goes totally as a theocratic nation, it can have serious, it cannot avoid the serious complications it could create. One has to also always think that India has a larger percentage of Muslims. If you take the total number of Muslims in India, that's more than the entire population of Pakistan. 20% Muslims. It's a huge population. And if you cannot, it's not like Pakistan where the number of Hindus were too less. It was easy to sideline or streamline at one side. Or a steamroll at one side, because India has a large population, and also one sees the radical elements coming up in the Islamic community. And while the whole Islamic community is trying to integrate with India, there are very radical Islamists on the other side. And while the majority of the Hindus are tolerant, there is a radical Hindu emerging at all the sides, but they have been there earlier also. As you have seen the Hindu Mahasabha, when Gandhi was assassinated, they've been so, acrimonious to the whole structure at that time, and Gandhi and the Indian nationalist movement and everything. And Hindu Mahasabha was so vocal and acrimonious. And Godse's assassination of Gandhi was the expression of this extreme acrimony that they had. At that time, it was there was no Hindu party nowhere near the power. Still, they had that kind of a power to kill, or somebody could come and do that. That kind of a motivation was there. So this big challenge is there in a country where there are a lot of different ethnic groups and cultures and religions are coexisting. India can survive only when we still remain a plural society. The key of India, all successful empires of India in the past have been plural. The moment it became a single religious dominating structure coming, it had a tendency to go very harsh. We remember about the Mughal period. Most of these people were very liberal and all accommodative. Akbar, for example, did not even follow Islam but wanted to make Akbarnama a new religion, which accommodates more ideas of tolerance. But when it came to Aurangzeb, that began the end of the Mughal Empire. So that's a lesson which no political leader would forget. I don't think BJP would go that unwise to make India a Hindu nation. But the tendency, the danger is there. I don't say that. I don't see that. I don't see the danger would not be correct if I talk to myself honestly. This tendency is there. There are a lot of fanatic people who want to take India to the theocratic level. There is a lot of small groups all around who want a dominant Hindu suppressing all other people. But at least officially, there is no such position. And the elite leadership of BJP is trying to be more accommodative, is what I was seeing. But that's no guarantee, because there are pressure points at different sides. So we all have to be vigilant, articulate, and defending secularism and India's pluralism, that's very important that India go forward without much damage. Concern is well understood, Abby. And now, what was the second question? I left that behind. Yeah, about the
about the Catholic Church,
about
holding
the Catholic,
licenses,
yes, yes. I made two questions, and I'm passionately involved in. I come to that. Yeah, the Catholic Church. I mean, by way of their belief structures, Catholic Church cannot survive if some fundamental belief cannot be maintained. For example, one of the major things of the Catholic Church is a mass, where they believe that they give a small piece of bread and some wine. And wine, they believe, that is transformed into the blood of Jesus. That wine looks like blood, probably. And the little pancake transforms into the flesh of Jesus. So you are eating the flesh of Jesus and drinking the blood of Jesus. That's the whole idea. And if you, I've seen, I've relatives in the Catholic families, and I've seen what they believe. My own grandmother, my father's mother, was a strong believer. I mean, though my father was a clear atheist, but his mother was a very staunch believer, and I had a very good relation with her. And she believed, she used to go to a mass. She believed that she could not chew the little pancake that she would get during the mass, because that's the flesh of our Lord. He would feel pain if I chew. That's what she believed. So she would just swallow it only. And they believe that it is the wine is the blood. So it's part of their belief. It's based on two things. One is confession, where the priest extracts all information about you. That started getting all information about all the people back to the empire's controllers. But still, it continues as a social control of the church. One is confession, and the other is mass, where they think that there is a transfiguration. That's what they say is happening. So wine is part of the faith structure of the Catholic Church. That's why they were allowed all these breweries. But interestingly, if you go to the biblical story of Jesus Christ, Jesus was very much interested in wine. One can see that it's part of their belief. So one of the major miracles of Jesus' story is that he transformed water into wine. So, which means a crowd of 5,000 people got a lot of wine and he produced it. That's the myth. So he was not against wine, as per the story. Whether Jesus is a historic person is highly disputed, and there is no evidence for that. That's another thing. But look at the Last Supper. Again, wine was served, and the whole wars were going on with the Holy Grail. People believe that a grail where the wine was kept was of Jesus Christ, and for that nations were fighting for a long time. And Holy Grail wars are also very important. For the church history and tradition. So in the Christian tradition, wine is a part of their faith, and it's not against the Christian traditions and faith and beliefs, except perhaps in the southern state of India, in Kerala, where, interestingly, the church is one of the biggest real estate owner in Kerala. In all cities, they own a lot of real estate, and they have a lot of little malls and shopping complexes, and rent out a lot of places to lucrative businesses, including alcohol shops. In the church-owned complexes also, you can see a lot of alcohol shops, but the church is officially against consumption of alcohol, and they are for abstention of alcohol in Kerala. But of course, on Sundays, not. There they want the mass, and they will distribute the wine to the church visitors. They produce wine, they distribute wine as part of their faith, and outside they will argue for alcohol ban. That's the irony of it.
Anyway, your lecture on the topic narcotic drugs, it is very excellent and informative. Thank you for the information given to us.
So, any more question?
I think we have another one.
Yeah, I like to share something towards cannabis use. And now, throughout the United States, most of the states, it has been legalized to control pain, especially in cancer patients. I don't think they established the legal blood limits. I don't know if it's been across the state, it's been established yet. But for alcohol, it is being established. 0.08% is legalized blood level. If you go above, you will get a ticket if you are driving. And if you are driving and if you are or influence of either cannabis or any other narcotics or alcohol, if it is above the legal limit, you will get a ticket, as well as if you are a licensed professional, you will lose your license also, like doctors, engineers, nurses, and all. It's no if or buts. In order to get that license back, it's very, very painful. You might as well lose your career. That's what happens in United States. Yet people use it. Anybody can get alcohol above the age of 21. It is not. It is available everywhere, even in grocery stores. Anywhere you can buy alcohol. But I like one person said, do not legalize cannabis. I do for that. I don't believe in to legalize cannabis. I don't think it's a good idea. Like Dr. Sanal was saying, it creates schizophrenia, delusion, hallucination. This is very true. This is what happening. If people learn to take it one time and then did it 2-3 days, then after 21 days, they will get addicted to it. They cannot do without it. It's not good. But then there is people struggling with severe pains. The medical society cannot control their pain, especially in cancer. Pain can be measured. 0 to 10 is the scale. The doctor will say, what is your pain level today? Doctor, some patient will, it's more than 10, doctor. I need this, and they're kind of addicted to it, and then we go to another patient in another room. What is your pain scale today? It's 9.5, doctor. They keep on saying, and doctor increasing the dose. They are medically prescribed drug addicts, and when they get a lot of drugs, some people share with their friends. They abuse a lot, So at this point, I don't believe in it to legalize cannabis anywhere, not in United States, Canada, India, or nowhere. I understand. The one person said a lot of Catholics, bishops and priests are holding license for a brewery. It is true. In mass, they use wine as well as they consecrate wine as well as bread. I never use wine. If it's been ordered, I decline it. I don't believe in it. It's up to them. I have nothing against to it, but they make a lot of money in it, doing these breweries. But are they helping the poor? I don't think so. The way they have hoarded up the money, I don't think they are helping the needy people, either Catholics or outside Catholics. That's why nowadays people are fighting for church bill. Church bill must be enforced. With the parish I brought up, I think they watch all the accounts, and we found out one priest took 47 lakhs of rupees. We caught them.
We come to that subject another time, but let's fix it.
Okay. This is all I want to share. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to
the
talk.
good contribution. Yeah, thank you for the good contribution. I don't say that, I fully respect your position that it should be banned, and you have seen, as a medical professional, you have seen the dangers of it. So I'm not advocating that it should encourage. I would say that it should discourage in a persuasive manner. But the rights of the people we cannot take. And recreational, not only medical use, for example, what is the Canadian experiment is not speaking about medical use or those who are addicts who should get it or something like that. For recreational, for entertainment, for happiness, if somebody wants, one should have it. That's the Canadian experience says. That experiment says. That's how it is in Uruguay also. So therefore, it is to be watched and seen and closely seen for a long time. Then only one can understand the pros and cons, how it is actually coming into reality. Because when it is a concept, when it's an idea, it can, we all can articulate it with our own understanding, or scholars or sociologists can think about it. But when it is try it as an experiment, we can see, eventually study, with tangible evidences how this is going to affect the society. I would, in any case, personally, I feel I would advocate freedom of people, of informed adults to decide for themselves, and no society imposing things upon them is my personal position on. Not only that, but that doesn't mean that I want to use it, but I would advocate people's right for that thing. I personally, if somebody is interested, when I was a young boy, I was educated that one should not have anything intoxicated, and that's how my parents have been telling me. So I started thinking about coffee. Coffee has caffeine, and I stopped coffee at the age of 11. Then there is addictive tendency in tea. At the age of 11, I started drinking coffee at the age of 8 or 9, a little bit, because Kerala is land of coffee. And then I stopped tea for a long time, maybe from my 12th year or till my 15th year or something like that. I have not been taking coffee or tea thinking that that's an addictive thing, and that's not very rational. That was my position. I was a kind of trying to be the best possible correct position. Therefore, I stopped coffee even and tea even, and I was told that I should take a lot of milk. Now I hear that, well, there is an argument about milk. Milk is not for us. Milk is for the calf, and we are exploiting the animal. That's another argument. Now I've changed that. I drink a lot of coffee and tea. I like coffee and tea, and I like the enjoyment that I get when I get a fine cup of tea. I used to smoke a lot at one time, though I was very, very, totally away from all these kind of things. When I was a university student, I started smoking. I smoked for quite some time, and then I understood the dangers of it, and I stopped it. I would advocate anyone not to try smoking. Tobacco is more dangerous than all of these things, which can be more addictive and more hazardous to your health. Avoid tobacco. But if somebody wants it, they should have the freedom to have it. I would advise never ever try cannabis if possible, or marijuana or anything. But if somebody wants to have it for entertainment, they should get it the lighter dose, because that is how it should function. Because informed people should have their choices, is what I think. I believe in the right of people to decide for themselves. Informed adults deciding for themselves. That I try to keep as my key word for this. Thank you.
May I add one more thing? I used to drink tea and coffee. Then I cut down to one time in the morning coffee. Now for 4 or 5 years, I don't drink coffee or tea. It's easy to stop it, if anybody likes it. But I am not asking anybody to stop it. They can drink as much tea and as much coffee they want. Because I don't drink sodas either. I'm not taking it as a compliment. I think that's to protect health. You can drink as much Coke you want. Anybody want to drink any wine they want, or whiskey, whatever. But this is my personal opinions. If anybody like to do like that, they can. That's all.
Yeah. Thank you for that contribution. But what I say is that, we can have our opinion that should be implemented in our life.
Yeah.
Not on others' life. We cannot impose it. And no individual has the right to impose their views on other people. Nobody can force their views on other people. You cannot impose a religion on other people. You cannot impose a kind of a worldview on another person. You cannot impose a politics on another people. You cannot impose what you should eat on other people. And that should be informed adults deciding for themselves. Right. So if you want to drink coffee and enjoy it, drink coffee. But don't promote coffee. Of course, coffee is not that dangerous. Of course, we know that. But any kind of addictive, dangerous, or other narcotic or other things, I would never, ever promote it, advocate it. But I would speak for the right of people to choose for themselves.
Right. So I think this is the end of our segment, and thank you everybody for asking your questions, and I hope you've cleared all the doubts that you have. Thank you, sir, for joining, and I hope to see you all next weekend, same time on Sunday.
Thank you very much.